Wide receiver Garrett Wilson has logged 178 receptions and over 2,100 yards in 2 years as a New York Jet. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers will boost his fantasy value to new heights. In April of 2023, the sports world was shaken when Aaron Rodgers was dealt to the New York Jets from the Green Bay Packers in exchange for a first and a fifth-round pick. A lot of hype naturally surrounded then second-year wide receiver Garrett Wilson, as Aaron Rodgers was an immediate upgrade to Zach Wilson, his current quarterback. It was hard to open Instagram without seeing a training camp highlight of Garrett Wilson catching one of Aaron Rodgers' passes. Many assumed Wilson was primed for a breakout campaign after winning Offensive Rookie of the Year during the 2022 NFL season. As Wilson and Rodgers reportedly established more of a rapport with one another, Wilson shot up fantasy managers' draft boards. The New York Jets became one of 2023's most hyped teams coming into the NFL season. This made sense, as the team had added a couple of Rodgers' old friends from Green Bay, Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, as well as then superstar running back Dalvin Cook to pair with Breece Hall. Unfortunately, only 4 snaps into the Jets' first game of the season, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, leaving him out for the entire season. Former second overall pick Zach Wilson was thrust into the starting role, and Garrett Wilson was barely able to scrape out a 1,000-yard season. Let's break down some film to see where the Jets' offense went wrong with Wilson. This throw from Wilson is high, but Garrett Wilson's able to climb the ladder and reel it in. The window may be tight, but this is yet another miss from Zach. Zach hits the short throw, but there's not much yard after catch potential for Wilson here. In this clip, Wilson has a lot of separation down the field, but is barely able to reel in Zach Wilson's poor throw. This throw over the middle is still very much behind Garrett Wilson, but is able to pluck it out of the air and take it for some yards after the catch. In this game, we saw a lot of missed opportunities and low ceiling touches due to poor throws by the quarterback. While I don't think Aaron Rodgers will fix every issue with the offense, Garrett Wilson's targets and ceiling will be greatly increased with Rodgers under center. The playbook will open up way more in Robert Saleh's offense, and with new wide receivers in the mix, the defense won't be entirely focused on Garrett Wilson. The offensive scheme and output was worst-case scenario for the New York Jets, and it's hard to believe Rodgers won't improve that at least a bit. This is part of the reason why I believe Garrett Wilson is in line for a huge fantasy breakout. He's already produced 2 1,000-yard seasons with poor quarterback play. Imagine what he can do with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers' arm and accuracy will absolutely lead to better targets and receptions for Garrett Wilson. In 2023, we saw what a true worst-case scenario looks like for Garrett Wilson and the Jets' offense, and he still put up 1,000 yards. The amount of weapons on the Jets' offense could truly break fantasy football this season. One number that sticks out on Garrett Wilson's stat sheet is his 6.2 yards per target in 2023. That was good for 107th in the league. 107th. Was this because Wilson utilized his opportunities poorly? The film proved this wrong. In fact, the only other wide receiver one that measured in with a similar statistic was Davante Adams with 6.5 yards per target. He also dealt with a poor quarterback situation in 2023. Another stat I think will go up that will improve Wilson's fantasy value is his touchdown percentage. A lot of the red zone targets he saw from Zach Wilson were really poor throws that didn't give Wilson much of a chance in the first place. I think this will really improve with Rodgers under center. The point I'm trying to make is this. Wilson didn't fail with the opportunities he had. He didn't have an opportunity in the first place. Fading Garrett Wilson for his performance last year simply is not an option in fantasy football in 2024. The film is choppy at first, but we see Garrett Wilson running a corner right to the sideline. Unfortunately, the throw from Zach Wilson is missed, and Garrett Wilson barely hauls it in just for it to be out of bounds. I think this one play can encapsulate Garrett Wilson's whole 2023 season. A playmaker that wasn't able to be utilized correctly because of poor quarterback play. On this next play, Zach Wilson tries to throw to Garrett Wilson down the left sideline. Unfortunately, the pass is broken up before Garrett Wilson can haul it in. To Zach Wilson's credit, there wasn't much separation to which this ball could be thrown to. A lot of his options were covered, and Zach Wilson decided to throw the ball down the field to a receiver that didn't have much of a chance in the first place. The first clip is a simple check down, where Garrett Wilson finds the hole in the zone coverage and Zach Wilson hits him right there. This next throw, though, was both behind and in danger, being tipped before the receiver could get his hands on it. It looked like it was thrown a bit too early and off target. Unfortunately, these types of throws are all over Garrett Wilson's film. We'll see a bit more later. This video was actually one of Zach Wilson's good reps from the game. He gets out of the pocket and finds Garrett Wilson on the sideline, and Garrett Wilson's able to get some yards after the catch from it. While the throw was on time, I was more impressed about Garrett Wilson getting open than Zach Wilson hitting the throw. Another solid rep from Zach. He's able to fit it in between the defenders, and Garrett Wilson hauls it in. But here's the inconsistency. Zach Wilson misses Garrett Wilson on a slant over the middle of the field. With Wilson's athletic ability, this could have easily gone for more yards after the catch. Going over all the reps I've shown from both the Eagles and the Chargers games, there's a couple reasons why I think Garrett Wilson will truly break out in fantasy this year. The first of those being, Zach Wilson was just not a good quarterback last year. As I've stated before, Aaron Rodgers will be a complete and immediate upgrade over the last year's starter. We could easily be sitting here in October discussing why Garrett Wilson's ADP was an early first round with Rodgers coming back. And if Rodgers comes back healthy, which we can assume he is, the sky is the limit for Garrett Wilson in 2024. I'd also like to discuss Malachi Corley and Mike Williams. Corley was drafted out of Western Kentucky with the first pick in the third round of this past draft. He's amazing with yards after the catch and a pretty well-rounded receiver. I think he fits in really well next to Garrett Wilson and new addition Mike Williams. Mike Williams, of course, is a former Charger who was signed this offseason by the team. He's great with contested catches and can bring in any ball that's thrown to him. If he can stay healthy, this wide receiver trio I think can really help Garrett Wilson break out. All three of these players have specific roles and will be able to play them to perfection next to one another. This trio could be very dangerous, and I can see the offense opening a lot under this wide receiver trio, Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, and Braylon Allen. It's a great group of guys on the offensive side of the ball this year, and the Jets could really make a run at the division. Besides, the defense won't be able to only focus on Garrett Wilson, because there's two other very talented receivers running around the football field. I'm very impressed with the way GM Joe Douglas and the Jets have rebuilt this offense after what it was last year. They've definitely learned from their mistakes, and I think the Jets will be a great team. Maybe even win the division. This could be the year that the Jets truly do what they're supposed to do, reach their max potential. With this explosive offense and their already great defense, which was proved last year in the stats, I think this team could be very special and could even make a deep playoff run. They have the quarterback, running back room, skill position, offensive line, defensive line, and defensive backfield to really make a run. It's easy to forget that they have superstars littered across both their offense and defense, especially in their defensive backfield. They had a great defense last year and I expect that to return to form. Robert Saleh is a defensive head coach, so I expect the defense to be just as good as it was last year. If the offense has positive regression, it will be great. I know it's easy to doubt them because of their past, but the Jets are for real this year. Wilson is currently going off the board at the wide receiver 8, which I think is a totally justifiable position for the type of player he is and the situation he's been thrusted into. I have confidence he can both reach this ranking and maybe even be top 5 in a stacked receiver class. If you're able to grab Wilson with either a mid to late second round pick in your fantasy draft, you've probably won your league. The only problem that could be presented for Garrett Wilson is target competition. Breece Hall commands a lot of targets, and with the new wide receiver additions, it might be a little tough for him to hit that 160 mark he had last year. But if his targets are high quality, like I believe they will be with Rodgers, his red zone targets will be a lot better, and he can get a lot more yards after catch over the middle of the field than he did last year. Many wide receivers break out in their third campaign. This could really be the truth for Garrett Wilson. Even if he has a slow start to the year, I think Rodgers and Garrett Wilson's rapport will be right back where it was last offseason. After looking at the film and breaking down the situation, only one question remains. Are you willing to take a chance on Garrett Wilson at his wide receiver 8 ADP in fantasy football this year? He's proved his talent, with winning Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2022 and putting up over 1,000 yards last year with Zach Wilson at quarterback. His situation is so much better, and I think he will break out this year. He's a wide receiver 1 on my board this year, and I think this is the year the Jets get it done and Garrett Wilson breaks out. I think the Jets can really win the division this year as well as make a playoff run. Wilson finally has the personnel around him that he needs to succeed. He has not had that through years 1 and 2 of his career. It's a bit of a gamble, but you don't win fantasy football leagues by going for 5th place. I'm willing to take the risk. This was the Garrett Wilson breakdown, and this is Fantasy Trading Room.